since it's the end of the year, it's time to reflect on all the books that we have read. So I have compiled a list for you of some of my favorite books in different genres. In case if you haven't read them or never heard of them, this is your time to pick them up. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. So before we get into reflecting on my year in books, I just wanted to say please make sure that you always like and subscribe. It really helps me out. I am almost to 1,000 subscribers as of filming this, and every new person in the community helps me out. Also, make sure you check my description box below because I have my links to my socials, Pango Books account, Amazon wishlist, Bookish Box Ambassador website where you can get 10% off the entire Bookish Box website. But also I have my book club on Fable linked below if you would like to join us. We are going to be reading our very first book in January and it is live. You can go join now. And then also make sure you check out my Patreon because starting in January we are going to be doing a lot of fun things, exclusive videos that are going to be coming to only my Patreons. So make sure that you check us out and you can join our book club over there as well. Alright, so before we get into all of the books that I want to suggest for you in different categories, I am going to talk about all of the books that I had unfortunately DNF'd in 2024. Please make sure that you always leave me comments below if any of these books are books that I need to give another shot to, maybe try again if you feel that I would like them, and let's just kind of get into it. My first DNF of the year was The Book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence. This is a fantasy book that was very unique, that dealt with two people, one person that works in a library and never leaves, and the other one comes to work at the library. There's like a mystery and such. I didn't get even halfway through it. I just wasn't connecting to the story or the writing. Mark Lawrence, I know, is loved by so many people, so of course it is me as a reader, not the author, but I ended up sadly DNFing this book. The next one is The Children of Fallen Gods by Carissa Broadbent, which is book 2 in the War of Lost Hearts series. I kind of was okay with book 1, not fully loving it, but not really hating it. And then we got to book 2 and everything like really slowed down. It lost my interest. I just couldn't stay in the story. And it's really sad because I love Carissa Broadbent's writing in the Nightborn duet. So I thought that I would love her earlier series, but sadly it just didn't connect for me. The next one that I DNF'd was Restless Stars by Carolyn Peckham and Suzanne Valenti. I literally got all the way to the final book in the Zodiac Academy series and I just could not. I didn't care about the outcome. I didn't care about the characters. At this point, I was so far checked out. I think I only made it maybe 3 or 4 chapters in and I was like, I'm not going to do this to myself. I'm not going to push myself to finish this series whenever I'm not even invested anymore. So unfortunately, I did not complete this series because I couldn't finish the final book. The next one that I DNF'd was This Woven Kingdom by Tahara Mafi. I wanted to love this series. I know that it is a YA fantasy romance and it deals with Persian mythology, Egyptian mythology, something like that. I love mythology and I love history, but just something about this series. I don't know if it was the characters or the writing or the world building, but one or maybe all of them culminating together just didn't keep my interest and I was like, I just don't want to continue. The next one is The Book of Azrael by Amber V. Nicole. This one I did mention in my book tag video that I am willing to be persuaded to give this another shot. I made it maybe halfway. It was way too slow going. It did not hold my interest. I didn't care about the characters. I didn't care about what was going on because I felt like from page 1, we were just off at 100 miles an hour. I didn't understand what was going on. There was no backstory, no nothing. And by the time we get to where you're really fleshing out their personalities and how they got to these places, I was so far checked out. So let me know below, should I give this another shot? And then the last book that I DNF in 2024 was To Bleed a Crystal Bloom by Sarah A. Parker. I could not continue reading this book. I was just icked out. I didn't care about the writing style. I didn't care about how this girl who has been literally a prisoner since she was a young child being in love with the guy that has enslaved her. I could not. Like, I understand that like Stockholm Syndrome is a real thing. You know, maybe as the story went on, maybe I would have understood a little bit more why she was so infatuated with him. I just couldn't do it. So I put it down. Okay, so now that we have all of the negativeness out of the way, let's get into some of my favorite reads and books that I want to suggest for you in any of these categories. I have my favorite mangas or graphic novels category, favorite romantasy, favorite paranormal romance, and my favorite others, which could be a lit fic, it could be, you know, anything, honestly, that doesn't fall into these categories. I have some dark romance, I have some contemporary romance, I have some YA. So I just have a little mix of everything. So let's start off with my favorite manga and graphic novels that I read this year. I am a huge fan of graphic novels and manga, but the two that stood out to me the most this year was My Happy Marriage. This series is so cute and so wholesome. It's not very spicy at all. Like, there's none at all in this. The graphics are beautiful. The adaptation on Netflix is honestly wonderful as well. Whenever you have an arranged marriage and, you know, she is thinking one thing about him and you just see their life and how they're kind of going about things, how they fall in love with each other, it was just so beautiful. And I can't wait until the new mangas come out. I can't wait until season 2 comes out on Netflix in January. I just love this series so much. And then the other one is Freaking Romance. This is like a webtoon bind up. It is so cute, so fun. There really isn't any spice in volume 1. Now, granted, I haven't continued on and I need to, because one of my Patreon members, Vanessa, has volume 3 as an arc right now, and I'm like, I need to get caught up. So I hope Vanessa lets me know if the story is really good. But this story is following a girl who doesn't want to follow her family's life they have portrayed for her. She doesn't want to go to college to do the things that family wants her to do. So she moves out on her own and gets an apartment. And it is a haunted apartment. I guess the tenant before she lived there had went missing. No one has seen her after a couple months. And as she's living there, her cat ends up getting along with this ghost, this other being. She sees him and she's like, who are you and why are you in my apartment? And it's about their romance. It is so good and so wholesome. I absolutely love it, and the graphics are phenomenal. All right, let's get into my favorite romantasies of the year. Of course, I read so many romantasies. I couldn't put everyone on this list, but these are my absolute favorite. I have 9 to mention to you, so definitely if you haven't read any of these, I highly suggest going to pick them up. The first one is, of course, Heartless Hunter by Kristen Cicerelli. This is the first book in a duology. It deals with a witch and a witch hunter. It deals with their romance where she starts courting him because she's trying to get close to where the witches are being held so she can free them. And then, of course, he is courting her because he thinks that she is the Crimson Moth. And it is their romance. They are trying to get in with each other, and there is a little bit of spice in here, but it is so well done. So if you like a fantasy romance with a witch and a witch hunter, definitely pick this one up. Book 2, Rebel Witch, comes out in February, I believe. I've already read the arc of it, and I will tell you guys right now, hands down, the conclusion to this duology is so good, so action-packed. We're going 100 miles an hour. So many things are happening, and I really loved the romance in that one too. The next one is The Other Side of the Mirror by Dana Evan. I have talked about this book ad nauseum this year because in March I was going through a book slump, and this book I got on NetGalley on a whim. It is the first book in a trilogy, and it took me out of my book slump, and I love this story so much. It is spicy, please know that going in, but this is a fae fantasy romance where our girl is living in kind of like our times with her best friend, because at the very beginning her family is killed by somebody, and of course her best friend's family was killed, so they're living together. They went through college. She has kind of a commitment issue where she doesn't keep a boyfriend past a week or two. One night, while she's hanging out with her bestie, she gets a text message from her boyfriend at the time that he is at her house. She goes there. Some mysterious man is outside telling her not to go in. She does. They're fighting some creature, and then she is whisked away to another realm. This is like a portal fantasy. And as they are making their way to the castle for some predestined thing that they are saying, like whenever the mate to the king is found and brought to him, the curse will be lifted across the land. So Bash is taking her to the palace, but some things happen along the way. Things are not as they seem. What if the fairy tale that you are told is not actually true? It's so good. Book 2, The Mirror in the Mountain, just came out in December. I am still reading the arc of it. I am so behind, but I'm almost done with it, and it is so good. It continues on, and this story in particular, even in book 1, it deals with some very heavy-hitting topics, so check trigger warnings before you go into it, because there is attempted SA in here, among other things. So just be mindful of that before you dive into this new series. The next one is Queen of Roses by Briar Bolin. I talked about this series ad nauseum as well back in April and May whenever I was reading through all 4 books of this series. It is completed, and it is so good. It is in Arthurian, not really a retelling, but it takes a lot of things from the King Arthur retellings and reimaginings. And you have fae in here, you have Arthur, who is the king. You're following the girl who is the sister to the king. She is on a quest to go find Excalibur. Yes, the Excalibur. And along the way, there are things that happen, betrayals happen. This is a dark series because there are some trigger warnings, so make sure you check those out also, but it is so good. You start out with Queen of Roses, and by the time you get to the 4th book, this whole world has expanded massively. There is way more going on. The story is no longer about King Arthur. It's about a whole nother thing. It is so good. And while you're at it, whenever you finish all 4 books, definitely go read the spin-off series that she has just started. The first book is On Wings of Blood, and it is so good. We can't have a favorite romantasy section without mentioning Vela Roth. I did read book 8, which is Blood Feast, in the Blood Grace series. Now, granted, I can't talk about book 8 because it would give away way too many spoilers, but if you want to read a very slow-moving, dense, political, epic fantasy with a lot of spicy romance in it, definitely check out the Blood Grace series. Book 1 is Blood Mercy. It is very slow going, you guys. I mean, there are times where you are really just like on a stroll with people that are just talking about the weather. It definitely takes your ambition to get through it, because whenever the good parts happen and the action happens, it literally makes up for everything in between. And of course, whenever you think that it's really slow and you just can't stay in the story, everything you are learning comes back within the next book or 2. So every little thing that you are learning definitely adds to the story. It adds to the backstory, the lore, the world, everything. I love this series so much. I especially love Mac and Lyros. They're so great. The next one is a new author to me, which is Under the Oak Tree by Suji Kim. This is a fantasy romance. Of course, it has some dark themes to it as well. Definitely check trigger warnings for any of these books, to be honest with you. This one is a very spicy romantasy that deals with an arranged marriage. It deals with miscommunication. It deals with him being a dragon slayer, so he is well known throughout the land, and it is their love story. It is about them getting to know each other. It is so good. I loved this book so much that I even got the bind up of the whole season 1 graphic novel, and it is beautiful. It's honestly beautiful. So if you want a very new, fresh take on a romantasy with an arranged marriage trope where they end up falling for each other, definitely go pick up Under the Oak Tree. We're also going to talk about Woven by Gold by Elizabeth Helen. This is book 2 in the Beasts of the Briar series. I feel like this is really starting to make its way around book 2. Book 1 is Bonded by Thorns. This is a Why Choose Fae Romantasy, where a girl goes to the Fae realm where there's these 4 princes and they all need to find their mates to break a curse. And it is literally their romance with everybody involved. It is so good, so spicy, and it starts out kind of like as a Beauty and the Beast retelling, but only the first book really has that. And as the books go on, they are so good. Book 4 just released a couple months ago, which is called Broken by Daylight. I do think Elizabeth Helen, they are a sister writing duo. They said that I think it's going to be a 7-book series. I'm all here for it. I love all the characters. Enough said. The next one is Rebel Witch, which I already talked about Heartless Hunter, and I did talk a little bit about Rebel Witch, so I'm just going to briefly let you know. Go pick up Heartless Hunter or pick up Rebel Witch whenever it comes out in February. You will absolutely love the Witch and the Witch Hunter romantic vibes. The next one is The Serpent and the Wolf by Rebecca Robinson. This is, I don't know if it's her debut or what, but it is a brand new first book in a series. I got the arc in September. I read it. This romantasy is so unique. It is so good. It deals with an arranged marriage. It deals with our girl having some hidden past things that she didn't know, her finding herself, but her also standing up to her brother who is somewhat evil. There are kingdoms warring together, and it is their romance. It is so good, and I cannot wait for the second book to come out. I just devoured this book as quick as possible. And the last one on this list will be no surprise to anybody who has read this, and that is Quicksilver by Callie Hart. This book deserves all of the hype that it's getting. It deserves everything that people are saying about it. I do know that it won't be for everybody. This book is so unique and so good on a romantasy. It does have some heavy hitting topics. Again, check trigger warnings, and it is spicy. But our girl, she lives in a very impoverished quarter of this town. And they always say that they are plague ridden, that they are sick, and that they can spread it to the other quarters of this town. So they are kind of isolated. They don't really get a whole lot of food, a whole lot of water. So they're all struggling. And she one day decides to steal from one of the queen's guards. They come to her quarter and they find her. They take her back to the castle, and she ends up picking up a sword, breaking some quicksilver that you shouldn't do. And all of a sudden, in pops this gorgeous man that she thinks is Death. He takes her through the quicksilver to a different realm of Fae and the court politics and the intrigue and everything about it. Our man is broody. Our man is everything that you would want. And this romantasy is so good. All right, so let's move on to the paranormal romance section. I never know what constitutes as a paranormal romance and what constitutes as a fantasy romance. So if some of these that are in this category should be in fantasy romance, we're just not going to talk about it, okay? The first one is going to be Cloak of the Vampire by Sapper A. Inglar. This book is very unique in the way that vampires are being told, because our girl finds out that her boyfriend is cheating on her with her roommate. She's out with her friends. One of her friends goes out into the alley. She goes out to check on her, sees her being kind of like roughed up by some guys. All of a sudden this guy kisses her and she goes black. Come to find out that's how vampires are made in this story. Now she's in this league, and Ragnar Rain is the leader of this league, and she has like 3 months to kind of show off what her abilities are. And then whenever she goes to the auction, everybody who is a new vampire definitely shows off what they can do, what they can bring to a league, and these leaders can bid on them. It is a romance between Ragnar and our girl, but our girl doesn't stay in the league. She goes to another league. Some dark things kind of happen. Again, dark themes, but it is so good. Blood of the Gods is book 2 that just came out in November, and I cannot wait for book 3 to come out. I'm desperate for this story to continue. Also, we have To Ashes and Dust by Luna Laurier. I read this year, but it is book 2 in the Of Shadow and Moonlight series, so you definitely need to start with Of Shadow and Moonlight first. This is a new adult paranormal romance about a girl who has a debilitating health condition where she is going to die, and we have an immortal guy who cannot die, and it is their romance. She ends up being sucked into this world that she didn't even know existed, and it is dealing with gods and goddesses, different realms, immortality, reincarnation, you name it. It is spicy, but it is so good and so unique, and I tell everyone, just check it out because it is so good. The next one is going to be Immortal Dark by Tygist Germa. This is a brand new book that just came out in September. It gives you dark academia vibes. It has vampires. It has kind of an arranged situation. It is enemies to lovers. It is so good. Our girl is one of the bloodlines that kind of holds vampires where they can't be their ruthless selves that they used to be. But her sister goes missing, and she wants to know where her sister is, and she's trying to find her. So she gets a letter stating that if she doesn't move into her home on the campus, then Susanios, who is the vampire of her family, he will end up inheriting the house and everything with it. So she goes to reluctantly live with him because she believes that he is the one that kidnapped and stole her sister. And it is their romance. She's going through this college trying to learn about this world and how the vampires and the humans coexist, how all the different houses are. I loved it. I know that some people didn't and some people did. I highly suggest the audiobook for this because it was extremely good, and I am so ready for the next book. The next one is The House at Watch Hill by Karen Marie Moning. I absolutely love Karen Marie Moning. I love her Highlander series, her Fever series, and now that she's coming out with a new series, I'm all here for it. This is a witchy gothic vibe, and our girl, her and her mom is dying of cancer, I believe, and she is just working tirelessly to make sure that her mom can survive as long as she can to pay her medical bills, the rent, all of that. And one day while she is at an interview, the house that they are renting burns down, and sadly her mom perishes with the house. So now she has nothing. She doesn't know what to do with her time now that she's not having to take care of her mom. She ends up getting a letter from a lawyer in Louisiana telling her, hey, you have inherited this house and millions of dollars, and basically your whole life is going to change, but you have to come to Divinity, Louisiana, and you have to live here for 3 years in order to inherit everything. So she reluctantly goes, and she moves into this house. Things start happening. People around her are weird. The whole town is acting weird. Our girl has some magical abilities that she didn't know about. This house is almost alive in itself. It is so good. I'm ready for book 2 because the cliffhanger that Karen Marie Moning left us on has me desperate and feral for the next book. And the last one for the paranormal romance is My Dark Beast by Olivia Wildenstein. I am a huge fan of Olivia Wildenstein. This is a new book series that she's coming out with, which is like mashup retellings where you have the first one that is Sleeping Beauty and Hades and Persephone mix. This book, of course, is dark. It deals with mafia. It deals with, a lot of things. Our girl is trying to make ends meet. Her mother is suffering from Alzheimer's, and she is running the florist shop for her mother. And then come to find out, she ends up having to take flowers to this wedding reception that's going on, and it is not what they had ordered. She ends up meeting one of the Hades brothers, Hades, right? Things happen, okay? I can't tell you anything more than that, but oh my goodness. This story had me on the edge of my seat. It has suspense. It has spicy good times. It has so many elements to it that I was like, wow, I need book 2 right now. So I think book 2 is coming out in March or April next year, and I'm all here for it. Definitely go read My Dark Beast if you like the mafia vibes, if you like retellings, and especially retellings that are kind of like mashed together where you have Sleeping Beauty and Hades and Persephone. And let me tell you, it is a gender swap Sleeping Beauty. That's all I'm gonna say. Alright, so the last category is, of course, others. This is all of the genres that I don't read a whole lot of, but I did have some favorites in here. So it's going to be a mashup. There are 6 books in here, and some of them are dark romance, some of them are contemporary romance. We'll just kind of go from here. So just remember, check trigger warnings for any of these especially. There are some dark romances in here that are very dark. The first one is going to be the Zodiac Queen series by Gemma James. This one is extremely spicy. It deals with our girl who has to go to Zodiac Island, and she has to remain a virgin the entire year. But what she does is she spends a month with each man who is in their zodiac sign. So you start out with Aries. They can do anything they want to her except have sex with her. There is an underlying plot going on. Even though each book is like 100 pages, you really get to know the men. You really get to know the characters and who you would root for, who you wouldn't root for. And there is a romance that our girl has with one of the guys, and I'm telling you, I am all here for it. I am ready for the final season of Zodiac Academy to come out with the last 3 Zodiac men. I need to know what's gonna happen. The next one is a thriller. It is The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. I loved this story. Our girl goes through something very traumatic. She is a patient in this psych ward. She doesn't talk at all. In comes a new therapist, and he is having sessions with her, only his point of view, because she doesn't talk until the very end. It is so good. The twist, everything about it, I was on the floor. I was like, what is happening? I need to read more by this author. The next one is a dark romance, and it is called Kissed by Shadows by Rosa Lee. This is a very spicy, very dark romance, and it is about a girl who grows up very privileged, but in the first chapter she is coming home. She gets a text message from her father the moment she walks in the door saying that basically he sold her virginity and sold her to the Russian mafia because he was indebted to them or whatever. And she grew up with Nikolai, who is the Russian heir, and they were best friends, and she always had a crush on him. His dad is standing there saying that, you know, she's gonna give up her virginity that day, but Nikolai is the one that is going to take it. So she doesn't want to do it, but she's happy that if it has to happen, it is with him. And it happens, but then he basically breaks her out of the house in the middle of the night, takes her to the Shadows, which is a rival mafia gang that is made up of different mafia mob men. You have 2 Irish mafia men in there. He drops her off and says, you'll be protected. And the story goes from there. It is a why choose. It is so good, so dark, and so spicy. Book 2, Claimed by Shadows, just came out in December. So I highly suggest get on this series. Rosalie knows how to write her men. The next one is a YA contemporary romance, and that is 1,000 Boy Kisses by Tilly Cole. This book is gut-wrenching. It is sad, but it is everything. It follows our girl Poppy, where she is in love with the boy next door. They have kind of a romance, but then he has to move back to Norway, and she's very sad about it. They're 15 at the time. They end up Skyping each other basically, but after a couple months she stops. He comes back after 2 years. She isn't talking to him. He is mad and very like mopey and angst filled, and he ends up cornering her and finds out why she quit talking to him. And it is about their romance, and it is about, you know, life and coming of age, and it is just so beautiful. But if you decide to read it, please make sure that you have tissues handy and be ready to be in a lot of pain. It is worth it. The next one is a dark romance, and it is Lights Out by Vanessa Allen. This was so good. I did not expect to love it as much as I did. This is a TikTok sensation, I guess, because it deals with a guy who is on Mass Talk, and our girl who's a nurse really loves watching watching him because he uploads videos every week. And then he ends up finding out that she is obsessed with him. So he breaks into her house, tries to fulfill some of her fantasies. It just goes from there. It is a stalker romance. It is so good. Our girl and him, very spicy times, but his banter specifically, I was laughing so many times because even though it's a dark romance and is dealing with some pretty bad topics, you laugh throughout the whole book. It was a wild sensation, but I'm here for it. And then the last book that I'm going to talk about is an entire series that I had just binged just very recently, and that is The Hollow Boys by Monty J. And the first one is The Lies We Steal. It is so good. It deals with different couples in each book. However, you have to read it in order because there is an overarching plot and you will not understand what's going on even though it's a different couple in book 2 without reading book 1. So good. I don't even know which one's my favorite, to be honest with you. So many people love Thatcher, which book 3 and 4 is Thatcher's story, but I kind of liked Rook, who was book 2. Alistair, loved him in book 1. Silas, he's our angsty, silent guy who doesn't believe in love anymore, and his book is book 5. So good. If you want a good dark romance that are interconnected standalones where you have to read them in order, go check out The Hollow Boys by Monty J. You will not be disappointed. All right, everyone, those are kind of my favorites from each genre. Of course, I loved so many other books this year, but I wanted to give you guys a little bit of some suggestions if you are looking for any of them going in 2025. If you want to branch out and read more dark romance or read more romantasy or paranormal romance, whatever it is, I hope that any of these books that you decide to pick up, you end up loving just as much as I did. And leave me comments below if you plan on reading any of these. If not, leave me a knife emoji down below for The Hollow Boys, and that will let me know that you were at least here if you do not want to leave me a comment. I hope you all are enjoying the holidays, and I will see you next time. Bye!